Welcome to the Food Professor Podcast, presented by Cattle, Season 4, Episode 35. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm the Food Professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Our very special guest for this episode, recorded live at SIAL in Montreal, is Adekambi Laleye, co-founder and CEO of UpTaste, technology and packaging winner of one of the innovation contests at SIAL. And they are a company that offers this really neat in-store automated sampling technology that's both physical and digital. So, and he's also has the unique distinction of being the tallest person we've ever.
Yeah,
he could barely had to duck his head getting in. I think he's 6 foot, 7 foot, 8 foot
into our fishbowl. Like so, do you think that with this technology, it is the end of nice ladies giving us free food at Costco? Is that what's going on?
Well, I, we'll talk about it in the interview, but I think it's very interesting because it's not like, when I go to do those things, I interact with these people really. I go there and they ask you, they make sure if kids don't run up and have allergies or anything, but I don't really interact with them. And this is it's a hard job to fill. And anyway, so I think it's a really interesting thing and there's a bit of engagement.
Very
it takes the people side out of it a bit, but I don't know how important the people side is anymore. So it's a fascinating. And anyway, the SIAL judges thought it was really innovative. He won the award, so we're going to tell you, we're going to introduce you to him, and he'll tell you all about it. And you guys, all the listeners, can decide for themselves. So that's coming up in a little bit. Now you're just back from Berlin. You were chasing 99 Luft balloons, no doubt, in Berlin. Like you. Were you there for like half an hour because you got off the tarmac, did some stuff, got back on the plane and came home. So what were you doing there? It's a quick turnaround. Yeah,
as I was exiting the airplane, I told the pilot, just hold on a second. I'll be right back.
Keep it idle. Hold my beer. Hold my beer. I'll be back.
This time of year, for you and I, it's very busy. You're at shows. I'm at shows. I was asked to keynote a risk assessment event by the German government. And basically, they wanted me to talk about what we're seeing in the digital world, digital traceability world. How are we better equipped, not only as a country but across the world? Because we did a comparative analysis, which we haven't talked about on this podcast, but we did a comparative analysis of OCE countries, looking at digital traceability systems, and it was funded by the World Bank, and we were releasing the study basically on Monday in Germany.
And is this for like to help in recalls and food fraud and stuff like that?
The big focus, because I was in Europe, everyone's talking about food fraud. Everyone, because Europe is. You've been to Europe. Europe is complicated. The East, the West. It's just there are so many countries, so many languages. There's the EU. There's also, of course, the issue of different nations. It's complicated. So there's lots of food fraud, and of course they had this huge horse meat scandal back in 2013. We didn't have something like this.
Now, for the listeners, some of the grocers discovered that their meat lasagna was not bovine; it was made from horse meat, and they only discovered it when they did DNA tests. That's
right, exactly. And it erupted in England, and in England, as you know, eating a horse is like eating your dog in North America. It's like people treat horses like pets. Yeah. So it's very different for sure. So huge scandal really got the EU to fund a lot of research on food fraud, which is not exactly what we see here in North America, but it was. I thought it was a very interesting event because there were probably about 80 countries. And I was speaking first, and the person from the FDA was second, and so it was really interesting.
So it wasn't just a group of academics talking about this; it was just practitioners, academics, regulators, like all the stakeholders kind of thing.
Mostly, I would say the vast majority were bureaucrats from the government.
Okay.
Yeah, and in terms of academia, I'd say probably about 30% were academics, and a few people from the industry, but mostly bureaucrats.
Okay. Well, welcome back. I don't even think you had time to get jet lagged.
That's the deal you made, and that's why I'm actually doing another trip in Spain in a couple of weeks, and I'll do the same, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's see what's going on here. So I was just at the Retail Council of Canada's big STORE2024, their big the big conference, which had some awards. at the awards, the Excellence of Retail Awards, there were 4 grocers that took home some hardware. So Metro took home eCommerce Experience. Farm Boy, I think, shared the award in-store experience and design. That's actually, it's interesting. That's actually the biggest and most competitive category in the awards. There's literally dozens of submissions about who's doing in-store. Right. So it's a big deal to win. Loss Prevention, LCBO, and also George Saleas, the
LCBO. Oh, okay.
Yeah, the George Saleas, the great CEO of the LCBO, which for those of you across Canada, Ontario Liquor Control Board, as they're kind of formally known, but they're the big wine and liquor retailer, and he won Retailer of the Year, Distinguished Retailer of the Year. So great award. He had lots for team there. So I was chitting and chatting with all those folks.
Awesome.
And then Tim Hortons won for Philanthropic Leadership for that cookie. You know, they did that cookie design and they donated for the cookie. So they won, again, another competitive category. I think
the campaign happened a few months ago or a few weeks ago.
That's right. You had to have it. It was kind of conceived in 1 year. It's like, the awards.
It's a yearly event.
Yeah. Pattison Food Group, which we know very well from the West Coast, took retail marketing for some of their banners, some of the work they did in some of their banners, and LCBO took a second piece of hardware for talent development. So anyway, just thought I'd call out some of the retailers and operators.
So a diverse group of winners.
A diverse group of winners. And breaking news from the conference, I just got home, and the head of Eataly North America was in and on the stage, and he broke some news. They, of course, not I say of course like you'd know, but they're opening a third location actually this week at Don Mills, a shopping complex in Toronto, which tied Toronto as the country or the city around the world with the most Eatalys, Eataly being this big experiential grocer concept based, of course, on Italy. Now he announced a fourth location coming to Toronto in the CF Eaton Centre downtown. So that makes Canada or Toronto. There's no others in the country. They love Toronto. It's a concept that needs a lot of people, a lot of throughput, right? And
so it's pretty popular. It's working well.
Well, it's popular. It's joint venture with Loblaws. I think that together they're in it. Loblaws more a silent partner, kind of more of a provider, but it needs to thrive in high volume locations. So Eaton Centre, at least pre-COVID, had like 55 million people go through it. A year, probably that could be down to 30 million. But anyway, it's a lot of people. And it's a concept that needs, just a lot of people. So we're breaking a little bit of news there. So it was good. It's a good session. Lots of interesting learnings. Just finished with Greg Hicks from Canadian Tire, and he was just chitting and chatting about their perspective the times we're in and how people are shopping and thinking about retail. And so, it was great. I interviewed the head of recently, the former head of Levi's Europe. I used to work with Levi's, so she was wonderful and just talking about.
Yeah, you were on stage a couple of times, weren't you?
Once this year. So I did a main stage interview last on day one, but it was fantastic. We just had a great discussion. So let's get into the news without further ado. Then there's been much ado. I wanted to follow up on one quick thing, Red Lobster. So I think the process is going through. But what's interesting about Red Lobster is ostensibly, I want to get your thoughts on this.
I think we need to make an offer.
Well, ostensibly, people were talking about their unlimited shrimp offer was what pulled them under. But it seems more complicated than that. There's some talk of this shenanigans going on with the venture capital company that's just picking them apart for real estate and all kinds of other stuff. But anyway, it does look like the Canadian group is going to follow the U.S. group and could be the end for now of Red Lobster. Any I don't want to say final, but any other thoughts on Red Lobster before we move on?
We're done. It's like seriously.
All right.
Yeah, if they actually ran out of shrimp, they may have associated themselves with Bubba Gump, a great shrimp company.
Great shrimp. Bubba Gump. Yeah, love Bubba Gump.
But listen, I got to tell you, I mean, I've been to I don't know if you've been to a Bubba Gump shrimp restaurant.
Yeah, Times Square in New York. I've been to the one in Times Square in New York. Yeah.
I got to tell you, I mean, I went once and it was fun. Like it's just fun. Yeah.
And you know what?
When you go to Red Lobster, it's not fun.
You know what I think? I think of this more often, and it may be just everybody's got their time, and then concepts get a bit tired. Like, they just get, just there's very few restaurants that the concept, we've been talking about many of them, right? Everything from Chuck E. Cheese to Red Lobster.
But the Forrest Gump movie is like 30 years old, and it's still
going.
It's still going. So
leadership matters at these places, right?
Oh,
Revitalizing the brand, leadership matters. Anyway, so for all the people that are going to be dislocated or were dislocated, all the employees, we wish them the best. And
absolutely. I'm sure they'll be able to find jobs.
I would think so. It's not like Red Lobster is lighting it up, so they'll have a chance to go. There's lots of great restaurants out there, lots of great concepts, looking for great people. So shout out to all those people. Now, you wanted to talk about RCC, Retail Council of Canada's theft numbers. What's on your mind about? I wanted to give a shout out to RCC because they did something yesterday that I thought was needed. For the food industry, for food retailers, I've always believed that this fragile moral contract that grocers have with the public, i.e., allowing the public into aisles so they can browse for themselves and pick their own food products. It wasn't the case back in 1916 when Piggly Wiggly decided to allow people to go into aisles themselves instead of just taking an order on a piece of paper from patrons. So since 1916, we've maintained this very important moral contract with the public, or there is a very important moral contract between the public and grocers, and of course recently we have heard that loss prevention or shrinkage theft was an issue. I was expecting, at least as we're seeing in the US, someone in Canada to quantify the problem, to actually say this is how much it's costing us. And RCC did exactly that yesterday. And I think it was important to put a number to the problem so people can start understanding how big of a problem it is. So when they see barriers, plexiglasses, security guards, gates, all that.
Different measures, they'll understand that this is a huge problem for the industry. So that's why I wanted to, congratulate RCC for doing what I think it was needed at this point, so people can understand what's going on and how their grocery experience has been impacted.
Yeah, very good. Well, and it's a problem that. Listen, if it was a retail problem, the retailers could solve it because they're pretty good at solving problems. But it's a societal issue. It's a very complicated issue. It's organized crime. It's a whole bunch of things. So it's a very complex issue. So great call out. Now, let's talk about a different issue, and we've talked about it before. Kraft Heinz renews a deal with Leamington. So let's talk to
Do you remember the great Ketchup Wars of 2013?
It was the day I shifted from Heinz to French's tomato. French's ketchup. Never went back.
Boycotted Heinz?
I didn't boycott. I made a choice. I tried a different brand, and
Leamington.
It was fine, and
it was a great story. I mean, if you remember, there was a boycott going on against Loblaw because it delisted French's to support Heinz. Their relationship with Heinz, and of course, at the time, Heinz was closing the Leamington plant, was basically saved by a community group to restart the plant, supporting 50 tomato growers in the region, the tomato capital of Canada, Leamington, and of course, the contract they had was for French's. And so when French's was delisted by Loblaw, there was an online rally to boycott Loblaw, and it worked. It worked because Loblaw actually decided to relist French's, and it's been in Loblaw stores ever since. I thought that boycott was actually reasonable. It was logical. It was targeted. It was pretty clear what the objectives are, what the objective was, and it was successful. And now, since then, we saw Kraft Heinz give a contract to the plant that it closed a few years ago, and we just heard today that it was renewing its contract until 2027. So great story coming out of Leamington. I think that group has done a phenomenal job getting great contracts to support our farmers in Southern Ontario. So I thought it was important to mention it on our podcast.
Tomato capitalism or tomato politics, whichever you like to,
exactly.
whatever you like to think of it. I mean, where I can, I support our great Canadian farmers.
But
and
I thought in 2015 when we saw the ketchup wars, I mean, I really was happy. Whenever there's something going on about the supply chain and people are reacting to it, I'm happy. Right now, the Loblaw boycott doesn't make any sense to me. It's simplifying what I think is a much more complicated issue. But that boycott that went against Loblaw and Heinz, to me, was really interesting from a supply chain perspective, because people like you decided to make a decision as a consumer to go local to support the Leamington story. So that was great.
Interesting.
Yep.
Let's get to our interview with Kambi from UpTaste, a big winner at the SIAL Montreal event. But first, let's hear a few words from our presenting sponsor, Cattle. Ever feel like the world of ratings and reviews needed a superhero? Well, enter Cattle, the caped crusader with Canada's largest, most diverse, and daily active consumer panels. That's right, Cattle is not your average podcast sponsor. So why choose Cattle? Because Cattle excels in consumer insights from your consumer, while also blazing trails in the realm of ratings and reviews, pioneering the future landscape of user-generated content. Beyond the valuable syndicated receipt data, they stand as unparalleled collector of reviews at scale, irrespective of category or price point. A testament to their impact, partnerships with giants like Walmart, Canadian Tire, and more. Visit AskCattle.com now for an exclusive The Food Professor podcast listener discount on your first review or research campaign today. That's AskCattle.com.
Well, another guest, another star.
It's fantastic. This has been a fantastic show for us. Like, we really appreciate everybody who spent some time with us, and it's been 3 great days of meeting really interesting people. So the trend continues.
And we will be honest with you, Kambi, our guests. We actually missed the pitch competition altogether, and but we heard it was pretty darn exciting.
It was indeed, yeah.
And you won.
We did.
Yeah, he's got. There. Perfect. I'm sure it felt like that yesterday when you won, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So tell us more. First of all, tell us about UpTaste.
UpTaste, yeah.
What do you guys do? Where are you based out of?
Yep.
And then we'll actually talk about the competition.
UpTaste, we have automated in-store sampling. So what does that mean? So instead of having a brand ambassador stand in stores handing out samples of either beverages or cheese or granola or whatever it may be, we have automated the whole process. So we have a machine that we place in retail that allows a consumer to walk up to it, see a commercial play on the screen, click the screen, get a sample, try it. If they like it, they can go ahead, grab it directly, and put it in their cart to buy it.
Why didn't we think of that before?
Click, taste, buy. That's what we say. Click, taste, buy. It's that simple.
Now, were you inspired by those cat and dog machines that when the cat can kind of like tap the cat thing, the treat goes firing out at them? It's kind of a little bit like that.
So it's actually, there's a great story behind it. So my business partner and I, so his name's Maxime Paulus-Gosselin. We've been best friends for 23 years. And 14 years ago, he pitched me this idea. So he comes from the CPG space.
14 years ago?
14 years ago.
Okay.
It took us 14 years to get to where we are today. But 14 years ago...
I bet your first... I mean, it's interesting. Your first reaction must have been, nobody's doing that today, and that seems so simple. It must be something wrong that it won't work.
Not quite.
Oh, okay.
So again, the story starts with...
You're assuming too much, Michael.
The story starts, we're best friends. I'm working on my business at the time. He's working on his business. His business was...
Was it food related?
His was. I owned a digital agency.
Okay.
And he was taking over his parents' import-export business, cheese, called Les Dépendants. And during that time, he was launching a product called Old Amsterdam. And he would go into grocery stores every Saturday, every Sunday. Again, this is 14 years ago. And he would be cutting up cheese, giving it to consumer, cutting up cheese, giving it to consumer. And one night, we're working late on our own businesses, but we're best friends. We were just hanging out. And he looks at me and goes, there has to be an easier way of doing this. I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, finding staff, training staff, the cost of staff, it's all super impossible to do. But at the end of the day, when a sample's done right, it works. When a consumer tries a new product in store, they buy it, right? As long as they like it.
That's right.
So he grew his team from himself doing a weekend, Saturday, Sunday, to 15 brand ambassadors, 30 stores every single weekend. Sales skyrocketed. So he looks at me, he's like, there has to be an easier way. That moment, he drew on a napkin, I kid you not, a machine that would cut a piece of cheese, hand it to consumer, cut a piece of cheese, hand it to consumer. I looked at him, I said, Max, fantastic idea, but I'm busy, you're busy, it's not the right time.
Right.
Fast forward to 2 years ago. We're both exiting different roles that we were in. We looked at each other and said, you know what? I think it's the right time for us to go into business together.
And where are you located at the time?
Montreal.
You were already in Montreal.
Yeah, so about 5 years prior, I had sold my digital agency, which required me to move back to Montreal. So I was in Montreal, and he was in Montreal. And we said, okay, it's the right time. So every great story, we took off to Costa Rica, with the sole purpose of we're going to come back with the business plan. So he took off for 3 months. With,
a Costa Rican retreat.
Yeah, absolutely. So he took off for 3 months with his wife and his first kid at the time, who I'm the proud godfather of.
So you're pretty darn close.
Yeah, we're very close.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, very, very close. I like to say I'm their adopted child.
Okay.
That when he married his wife, that I was part of the package.
You were packaged deal. It's a package deal.
Are you guys both as tall?
You are a tall fella. We're not a visual podcast.
6'9".
6'9".
Yeah, he's about 6'5". He's a little guy.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we met on the basketball court.
We're little people.
Yeah.
We're small. Where'd you grow up?
That's a longer story, but I was born in Quebec City, but quickly moved to London, Ontario. Spent my elementary school days there. Moved to Ottawa for high school. CEGEP for Montreal. CEGEP.
Okay.
And then moved to the States for university. Mm-hmm. And after that, I moved to the Middle East for 2 years. Worked out there, but also was living in New York City at the time.
Oh,
and
wow.
Then,
you're a global traveler.
Yeah, global traveler. I love travel. It's just one of my favorite pastimes and hobbies to do.
So were you always a business-oriented type person, or science, or were you always an entrepreneur? You said you had your own digital agency.
Yeah, I had a digital agency, and I fell into sales. I studied media in university. Loved just the cameras and photography and the creation of content. And then my first role right out of university was creating digital content for a weather tech company in the Middle East. They were creating rain in the desert, and I was documenting everything. So that's a whole nother podcast, stories there.
No
but I just really enjoyed creating content. But part of that process, I was one of the more fluent English speakers. So they put me in some pretty big rooms with pretty important people and presented the project and was able to raise a lot of capital. And then through that, I just realized that, hey, I'm pretty good at talking. I'm pretty good at sales. And then when I came back to...
I can say that, yeah.
Thank you, appreciate it. And when I came back to New York, 4 other business partners got together, and we were looking at different technologies, and we fell into augmented reality and virtual reality. Again, this is many, many years ago. And we saw that there's a potential...
Early days
of it, when it was still very much buzzwords.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you know what? I think I know a couple people I can reach out to sell this to, and snowball effect. And 5 years later, we sold the agency, and then, that was kind of it.
So, UpTaste wins the award here.
Yes.
And
well, could you tell us about the competition itself? How does it work? The Agritech pitch competition. How does it work?
So it was a 3-minute pitch, which my business partner did. So we decided, we're like, do we do it in French or English?
You didn't participate?
No, I was the...
Get out.
Yeah, sorry. All right. It's been fun. I got to go. I didn't... So we looked at each other and said, do we do it in French? Do we do it in English? And we looked at the judges, and everybody's first language is more French. So we said, you know what? We're going to tailor it really to them, make sure they fully understand what we're doing. So, and Max also he's the CEO of the business. So he's more of the kind of, especially if they were going to ask him any questions around finance, and we wanted him to be the one to answer those. So we decided he was going to do the presentation, and he did an incredible job. He's extremely outgoing, lots of energy, super sharp, obviously, and was able just to crush it. So
that's great.
The judges saw.
And how many competitors for the Agritech division?
I'm not sure how many competitors. Yeah. I think in total there might have been 12 different companies pitching.
Competitors,
and big shout outs to Epic Tofu, who won the whole thing.
The whole thing.
Yeah,
okay.
So they won the big award.
So how many divisions are there?
Just 2.
Just two? Okay.
2 divisions, so we won our category, and Epic Tofu won the grand.
So you kind of came in second, sort of thing.
I like to think we're still first.
First in their category.
Yeah, I told my mom we're first.
Tofu, overrated.
Yeah. No, delicious. Delicious.
You can do anything with tofu.
So it's been early days. Have you seen any are people already starting to knock on the door? I mean, one of the reasons you do these things is just get some visibility, whether you win, tie, or whatever. I mean, you're a finalist, and you get some visibility at a show like this. Got to be pretty good for you. How's it been?
The show's been absolutely incredible. the amount of we used to typically walk these shows where the booths around us right now are the brands that we're going after, right? So when we place the machine in a store, we need 52 SKUs a year to fill. So either it could be, multiple brands that have a couple SKUs, but typically it's a brand per SKU. So typically we just walk these shows and we go booth to booth and we just introduce ourselves and we look at the brand to make sure that they're in the stores that we're in. And
hope you're talking to a decision maker of some sort.
Or at least the product can go into our machine, because our machine is temperature controlled, so 4 degrees to shelf stable. So we don't do anything that's frozen or that needs to be reheated. So if the product is an ice cream, then we kind of just move to the next booth.
Okay.
So typically we go booth to booth, but this year we were invited to be an exhibitor at the startup. And the amount of traffic that we've seen has just been overwhelming.
Fantastic.
It's the retailers that are walking by. So we've spoken to a lot of the larger retailers who we've had those conversations, but it's great to continue to push that conversation along for them to see the machine, to see us in person, to get that FaceTime. Because a lot of the times now it's done via Zoom or via, Google Meets or whatever it is, and you don't get that relationship building where at a show like this, you see them face to face, they get to know you, you build that connection, you can take it to the next step. And
now are your machines out in the wild today?
They are, yeah. We have 7 machines currently, 4 in IGAs, 2 in Provigos, and 1 at La Moisson. And our goal, the next step for us, is to get 25 machines in the market, which we're ready for as we speak. And then after that is we want 25 machines in the Montreal region, followed by 100 in the Quebec region. And then after we'll go to Ontario, place 100, go to BC, place 100, and then kind of work in.
What does scale look like there's a manufacturing component, obviously. What does scale and scaling that business look like for you? Is it just giving more capital? We've got the patented or the process. Is that how it works for you?
Yeah, we definitely have patents. So we have two patents on the machine, one being the temperature-controlled sampling machine. It's the only one in the world. And then we have a patent on the data flow, so the data that we provide back to the brands. But in terms of scale, it's exactly that. It's getting large retailers on board and saying, we believe in you guys, we believe in the technology and what you're doing. The brands love us. We work with 162 brands so far. And it's just continued to scale more machines and more stores to allow consumers to sample delicious products.
And the experience of the grocers, I mean, there's, in my mind, there's 2 types of, there's stand at every corner. Maybe you're interacting with people, particularly after COVID. I mean, people are still bouncing back from that. You would have been a great solution at the beginning of COVID, as it turns out. But I think, but I think that still means, people may or may not want to interact with everybody. Like, do you find people are, I don't know, on a spectrum of interested to intimidated to go up and interact with your machines?
Very interested.
Very interested.
A lot of people. So we kind of look at it, 10% innovators, 80% followers, 10% laggers. The innovators are people in all ages, all walks of life, whatever it may be, that are actively searching for new technologies out in the world, right? Then you have the 80% followers that want to see somebody else do it first. And our machines are placed in high traffic areas, either entrance of the grocery store or by the cash. So when somebody walks by and touches the screen, gets a sample, somebody else says, oh, wow, that was easy. Let me go and do it myself. And then they're like, oh, I actually like this product. Let me buy it. Right? So that's the 80%. But
what do you with the followers? How do you argue with the people who would say, well, with sampling, you still need that human touch? Like,
that's where the video
why would you
play.
interact with a machine?
So that's where most people don't want to hear a sales pitch. Most people don't want to interact with humans anymore. We're very social people. We can tell we're interacting with each other and we're outgoing people, but most people, they go into a grocery store, they don't want a sales pitch, they don't want to be pushed or sold.
But Kambi, I'll be honest with you, last time I sample once in a while. My kids sample, it is what it is. But I've never actually been pitched to. I'll be honest, like at Costco or Loblaw, doesn't matter. I don't know. Have you been pitched to when you tried?
Well, at the bigger formats, never. But at the sometimes in the smaller specialty stores, then it's typically the owner, like your partner, is typically, hey, this is my business, try my product. So, it's a gentle pitch, of course. I have a question. How do you deal with things like allergies, and how do you get past that? Because typically when you go to
kids
or, pick 20 of these things and this is some practical stuff, right?
So allergies, every sample. So we micro package about 90% of the brands that we work with. So we do sample sizes for them. It was one of the first things that when we went to the market and we started calling up brands, we said, hey, we have this machine, we can do samples for you. They said, love it, but we don't have sample sizes. So Max and I looked at each other and said, no problem. That's where our office in St. Vincent. We do the micro packaging.
That's not atypical, right? Listen, we make large things. We don't make these little sample
size. So we take care of that for them. On the packaging, it says allergens, of course. It contains. So from there, you have to look at the packaging to see what's inside. Our machine also states may contains in terms of any tree nuts or peanuts of that nature.
Sure.
In terms of the consumer that goes and clicks multiple times, it doesn't happen. Our process takes roughly 30 seconds to get a sample. So a consumer to stand in front of the machine...
You slow it down a little
for
bit.
3 minutes just to get 5 grams in terms of sample sizes, no one does it. If someone takes 2, it's chances are they're shopping with a partner or their child. They give them one.
Hey, try this.
Exactly.
Hey, try this. This was good. Try this.
And our machines are time-stamped. We know what happens with our machines at all times, so we can go back and see where people abusing it, and we've never seen the 3 back-to-back.
But you have data about history, and you can track, which is probably something you don't get with a human.
That's it. So we're, at the end of the day, we're going to morph into a data company. So we know how many consumers walk by our machine, how many stop, how many click the machine, what's the feedback that they provide. So thumbs up, neutral, thumbs down. And then after that, we get 9-week sales data for every campaign that we do. And a campaign is a 7-day sampling. And we get 4 weeks prior, what was the brand's baseline sales? During the campaign, what's the spike that we saw? And then 4 weeks after, what's the new baseline we were able to set? And that's where the value really lies for the brands.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, I want to say, what's next, but it sounds like you've already kind of laid out the roadmap.
Yeah. Scale, baby.
You're talking about scale it up. You got a great idea. You're now award winner. What do you see in the future? Do you see taking this global, scaling that way? I mean, you're going to get the attention of U.S. grocers, I'm sure, once they see this. We all kind of.
Saint is not a bad place to be either. I mean, it's
not at all,
it's the
food,
kind of the
hub,
Guelph of Quebec, really. Everything ag actually happens there.
Yeah. So our goal right now is to have 500 machines across Canada in the next couple of years. That's really where we want to be.
Right.
After that, we've been approached by other countries for exclusivities of just people buying our machines and using the software and basically copying and pasting what we're doing in Canada in other countries. And we're in talks with a few other people to do that. So it's global, right? It can be done really anywhere, and we're super excited to see what happens next.
Fantastic. Well, how do people learn more and get in touch with you?
UpTaste.ca, so UpTaste.ca.
UpTaste.ca.
My name is Adekambi Laleye, but everyone calls me Kambi, so it's Kambi at UpTaste.ca.
And if we go on our website, can we actually see images of your technology?
Yep, go on our website. There's a video that plays automatically that shows a consumer experience of how it works. And then we're super easy to find either on LinkedIn or email, or give me a call.
Cool. Fantastic. Yeah. Well, thanks again for joining us here. Congratulations again. Wish you continued success.
Thank you.
In everything you're doing. And thanks for joining us on the Food Professor Podcast.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Take care.
Thanks, guys.
All right. So you just got back from Europe. And one of the things I've noticed when I go to Europe in grocery stores, if anybody's traveled in Europe.
And I've been to grocery stores on Monday.
The cashiers sit down.
Yep.
And that's a fairly uniform experience in Europe. And it's a fairly uniform experience to say in North America, nobody sits down at the cash in grocery stores or other stores.
Some of them, but most of them don't.
It's very rare that you would see someone sitting down. And it actually got me thinking a while ago, why don't, cashiers, if we call them the associates or whoever, why don't they sit down here?
I know.
And I started to wonder about that. What do you think? Is it your same observation? Have you ever thought about this?
I honestly, I think it's a great question, and frankly, I've been asking myself the same question. I actually posted that question on X today, which really started an interesting debate about who should be allowed to sit and why should we not allow clerks to sit. I think personally, Michael, it would be a great question to ask cattle. What do you think?
I think that's a fantastic idea, and we're not going to ask the grocers. I want to ask people.
People, yeah.
What they think. Like, okay, here's my hypothesis. And this is with no data, that when Canadian Americans see someone sitting down on the job, they think they're lazy or they think there's something amiss. Like, I remember the first time I saw somebody sitting down, I'm like, it struck me as odd. I was kind of surprised by it. So let's not you and I speculate. Let's go ask with Colleen and Cattle's help. We're going to go ask Canadians what they think. What do you think? What would you think if you're
the one thing I would explore with this survey is what do people think is the healthier choice for cashiers? I mean, some people are arguing that standing up is the better choice because you don't have to sit and gain weight, and some people think, you should sit down because of your back and knees, and some people, and some people say they should have a choice. So that's certainly one thing that I would love to explore with cattle.
Well, and I'd also, you know what, we should also tag on this whole idea of the slow lane, the chatty lane, and
yep.
I don't remember which grocer. I think it was one of the Dutch grocers that said, you know, we got your self checkout, we got a fast lane, we got 8 items only, and then you got effectively your slow lane where you've got someone who wants to
you have time, you're not rushed,
interact with someone and isn't in a rush, and just, hey, how's your day, how's your dog, or whatever, you know. Anyway, so I'm kind of curious if people be interested in that kind of thing, or if that's I don't know if that's a European thing. So great idea. We'll do that next month, and next month will be our last. We'll wrap up season.
Can't believe we're almost in June.
Well, I mean, I was just about to say we're going to wrap up the season, but what we wrap up is you and me doing kind of the news of the week. But over the entire course of the summer, we've got great interviews that you and I conducted at SIAL. So the great interview will not stop, and we'll kick back up with season 5 in late August.
That's right.
Anyway, that's not for a few episodes, so let's not talk about that. So let's talk about interest rates. The Bank of Canada has held interest rates flat for many, many quarters after 10 consecutive raises of the interest rate. Now, I know talking to retailers, they're experiencing it firsthand. Consumers are either, they're in that tranche whose their mortgage is already renewed and they have a lot more to pay, or they're worried it's going to renew and the rates aren't going to go down. And between here and 25 and 26, and this crowds out a lot of discretionary and for some non-discretionary spending. If you were a betting man, what would you bet's going to happen on June 5th?
Well, so the Bank of Canada will decide on June 5th. So that's next week. I don't know. I'm 50-50 on this one. I think so. A lot of people are saying that there's going to be a rate cut. Honestly, I'm leaning towards idle. I'm leaning towards not changing anything at this point because it's maybe too early. And I've said that since March. I don't believe that there's going to be any movement until later in the summer. So that's kind of my impression because we're still, a lot of people are still working. I went to the airport on Saturday. I was not alone.
Jammed. But the behavior I'm seeing in airports, and this is validated, I think, by looking at retail numbers, is people are traveling in record numbers. I know in the U.S. the Memorial Day numbers set records. I think it's the same in expectation in Canada. But they're not buying that new outfit. They're not buying that piece of luggage. They're not doing whatever. They're putting everything into the experience. So I think they're making those decisions. Some of which is by COVID, like I need less stuff, and some of it is like, hey, listen, I'll make this suitcase do for now.
But to actually go to Europe for that lovely trip with your wife, will you actually, sacrifice caviar or that organic cereal that you've often bought before?
Yeah, or I'm not going to be able to go. Every nickel is going to go into the trip. Or we're not going. So I think people are making these decisions around it.
So I honestly, so what's your take on what's going on? I mean, did you guys talk about it at the store show?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, retailers are worried about a tranche of consumers whose mortgages would renew at a significantly higher rate. I mean, that probably impacts discretionary.
We're about
spending.
halfway through. I mean, about 45-50% of people who do have a mortgage are on a variable rate, and we're still probably halfway through that group right now. So there's still a lot of people, millennials, very economically active people, who are still looking at the boogeyman, i.e., the banker.
Sure. I mean, there's so many pressures on consumers. I mean, I was doing some numbers to report. The city of Toronto, to take an example, it's happening across the country, raised city taxes. They hadn't done it in a while. They raised them 9.5%.
Yeah.
There's 1.5 million households in Toronto. Do the math. At $600 million that just went poof out of, retail, debt servicing or whatever. So, the hits keep coming, right? I think the consumer is buckling under the stress. That's what we're talking about. That was a lot of talk about at the conference. And
disposable. So when you look at expenditures around food in particular, disposable income is not increasing all that much. Wages are going up.
Yeah.
But when you're paying taxes, when you're paying a bunch of things, that becomes a problem. So
on the plus side, everybody gets all this money back for the climate change tax, I guess. Give and take, give and take. Hey, let's end with this. Speaking of prices, you post some interesting. We've talked about supply management many times. Now you posted a chart hypothesizing or questioning.
I think I shocked a lot of people.
I know, because it said, "Is it really making foods more expensive?" Which is not really. Well, there's multiple rationales for supply chain management, but what are you thinking about, and what's your observation?
I just decided to dig into. It was a long flight to Europe. Started to play around with StatScan's data on inflation and looked at supply management categories, so poultry, eggs, and dairy products. And I realized that most of them have increased in price since 2017, but not as much as the average. There are three products that are above average: cream, butter, and chicken. And so, eggs. So
what are the three again, just to be so we're clear?
Eggs, butter, and cream. Everything else under the average. So you can't say that really supply management is pushing prices higher. But here's the thing, Michael, that I thought was a little bit intriguing. Our supply management friends have always said supply management stabilizes prices over time. Okay. But when you actually look at the chart I actually created, there's a lot of fluctuation there.
A lot of up and downs. Not a flat line. There's not a lot of flat lines in that chart.
No, not a lot of flat lines. And so there's more volatility there than the actual general food inflation rate. So on the one side, I do want to give credit to the fact that, well, I'm not sure that supply management is pushing prices higher compared to the rest. But at the same time, it does bring some volatility, which shouldn't be existing in the first place. And of course, we have to remember that industrial prices are much higher, especially on dairy, which makes the life of our processors a little bit harder compared to the U.S. But other than that, whenever I see the argument that, because we know that many politicians are saying, well, end supply management because, well, not politicians, but some people are saying end supply management because it's costing us more money. The evidence is just not there.
I said this is going to be the last thing, but just reminded me of something. What do you think about this? And I know the Restaurant Association kind of up in arms about this. In BC, chicken's coming home to roost with a suggested price increase. What'd you make of that?
Well, so I got a phone call from the marketing board, and I do appreciate the call, by the way. I do appreciate the fact that they actually came to me directly before the announcement was made public, which I appreciated a whole lot because they knew that media would call me. Sure. So that was smart on their part because they wanted to explain the transparency of the whole thing, and they knew that the decision would be unpopular. But it didn't pop as much. So the decision was basically this. So before in BC, that what they did to set chicken prices wholesale was to look at the Ontario price, and they add a chicken feed coefficient. So instead of doing that, they decided to go ahead with their own BC formula. Yeah. But when you actually, without going into the details, the BC formula will actually make chicken.
Please go into the details of the chicken feed coefficient. I really want to see that formula. We could put it in the show notes.
It's not public yet, which makes the whole transparency argument a little bit weak. Like I said that to the board. I mean, listen, you got to explain to people what you're trying to do here. And because chicken in BC is anywhere between 15 to 30% more expensive than a national average already.
Wow.
And it's likely going to go up. Now, Restaurants Canada is saying that chicken prices are going to go up by 20-25%. I don't know how they got their number because I don't know how to calculate that yet because the formula is there, but I don't know how it's going to be applied. So I think the certainty is that chicken prices are going up in BC, but I don't know how much. But that's bad news. And frankly, I'll be honest with you. And this is the one thing I hate about supply management. Every province has their own board. It's cheaper to produce chicken in Alberta. Why not produce chicken? If you're forcing consumers to eat Canadian chicken, make sure it's the cheapest possible. Because right now you're not. You're basically making BC, produce chicken in BC, and that chicken is way too pricier because feed costs are much higher than the average.
It's a fascinating dynamic, and I don't think we're done telling this story. So let's circle back on a next episode and see what.
Love to talk about chicken.
We'll talk about chicken till the cows come home. There you go. Winner, chicken dinner. So that wraps up our episode today, talking with SIAL winners. We'll have another SIAL winner actually on the next episode as well, because we got 3 SIAL winner interviews, fantastic interviews. So one more coming up, and lots of great content coming up over the next bunch of months. So until then, I'm Michael LeBlanc, media entrepreneur, consumer growth consultant, keynote speaker, podcaster, and a few other things. And you are?
I'm the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Until I see you again on the screen, until we talk again, everyone, and for everyone listening, safe travels. We'll talk to you next week.
Take care.